The Bengals are standing at a crossroads, and with November 4th creeping up, the biggest question in Cincinnati isn't about play calling or coaching. It's about direction. Are the Bengals buyers or sellers at the trade deadline? Now, I know the AFC North hasn't exactly been a powerhouse this year. Every team's been stumbling, which technically keeps the door open for the Bengals. There's still a shot to turn things around. But when you look at how rough this defense has been playing lately, it's fair to ask, is this team really one player away, or is it time to think long-term? And that's where a name like Kayvon Thibodeaux starts to pop up. The Giants' edge rusher has 23.5 career sacks, and according to reporter Jay Morrison, if Cincinnati were to make a move, they'd only owe around $3.5 million for the rest of the season. On top of that, the 2026 fifth-year option would sit at a manageable $14.8 million. It sounds tempting, right? Especially for a defense that's been struggling to get any sort of pass rush. But here's where it gets tricky. That 23.5 sack total looks a little misleading. He had 2.5 sacks, 5.5 sacks, and then 11.5 last season. So while he's improving, it's not the instant superstar production that number might suggest. Still, the real question is, would you give up a second or third round pick to bring him to Cincinnati? Because that's likely what it would take. Before listening to the latest news, subscribe to the channel, like it, and don't forget to press the bell icon. Let's move on to the new news. If the Bengals want a young, ascending pass rusher, Thibodeaux makes sense financially. But is he the missing piece? Or just another short-term fix for a defense that needs more than one spark? Here's the thing about a trade like this, it's never as simple as just add talent. If Cincinnati were to pull the trigger on Kavon Thibodeaux, the next challenge wouldn't just be his play, it would be his contract. Players like Thibodeaux don't show up quietly and play out a cheap fifth-year option. They know their worth, and they want to be paid like it. So even if the Bengals brought him in, his agent would be on the phone before the ink dries, pushing for a new deal, not waiting around for 2026. That's just how today's NFL works. The fifth-year option looks great on paper, but in reality? Most players never touch it without a big extension first. Now, let's be real, this Bengals defense has been a disaster. Missed tackles, blown coverages, no pressure up front, and a run defense that gets bullied far too often. The frustration is real. So, the big question becomes, would adding Thibodeaux actually fix any of that? Because if you're giving up a second-round pick, you're expecting an instant impact, someone who changes the tone of your defense right away. But according to PFF, and yeah, we know their grades aren't gospel, Thibodeaux hasn't exactly been dominant as a pure pass rusher throughout his career. He's shown flashes, yes, but flashes don't rebuild a broken defense. So here's what it comes down to. Is this move worth sacrificing draft capital, cap space, and future flexibility for a player who might help you get to the quarterback a little more often? Or should the Bengals be focusing on something deeper, fixing the structure, not just the surface? Because right now, no single trade is going to mask how bad this defense has looked. And unless that changes fast, no name, not even Thibodeaux, will be the magic answer. Let's be honest, Bengals fans, Kayvon Thibodeaux isn't the fix. He's not suddenly going to start blowing up run plays or turn this pass rush into a nightmare for opposing quarterbacks. Even if he did, it wouldn't erase the deeper problems this defense has, the missed tackles, the blown coverages, and the overall lack of discipline that's haunted this team all season. That's the harsh truth. One player can't fix what's broken. You can't give up a valuable draft pick, take on a young player who's already eyeing a new contract, and expect the defense to magically transform overnight. All that does is put the Bengals in a tighter corner, fewer picks, less flexibility, and another potential contract headache. Now, sure, the AFC North is still up for grabs. Nobody's running away with it. But let's not kid ourselves. Giving up 39 points to the Jets and 30 to the Steelers isn't the kind of football that wins divisions. That's the kind of defense that wastes Joe Burrow's best years if it doesn't get fixed soon. And look, if you're talking about true difference makers, names like Max Crosby or Myles Garrett, those guys change everything. They collapse pockets, force turnovers, and set the tone every snap. You build around players like that. They're anchors. Trey Hendrickson's been that kind of player for Cincinnati. The motor, the intensity, the tone setter. But Thibodeaux? He's not there yet. Maybe someday. But right now, he's not the one who's going to drag this defense out of the mess it's in. At the end of the day, Kayvon Thibodeaux could help, but he won't fix everything. He'd bring energy, some burst off the edge, maybe a few key plays down the stretch, but this defense needs more than a spark. It needs a reset. And that brings us to the bigger question, where is this franchise really headed? Because if we're being honest, Bengals fans are living in two worlds right now. In one world, the fantasy world, we imagine what it would look like if this team had a fresh start. A new head coach. A new general manager. A front office that knows how to scout, draft, and build around Joe Burrow's prime years the right way. In that world, every draft pick matters. Every move has purpose. And the future feels bright again. But in the other world, the one we're actually living in, it's still Zac Taylor and Duke Tobin calling the shots. And if that doesn't change, those draft picks? They don't mean much. Because the same problems keep repeating themselves. The same blind spots in roster building. The same excuses? That's why, right now, every decision matters. If the Bengals want to climb out of this hole, they can't just chase names at the deadline. They need a plan, a vision, and leadership that knows how to build a contender from the inside out. Because until that happens, it won't matter who they trade for, Thibodeaux, Crosby, Garrett, this team will still be fighting the same battles week after week. You never want to hand a brand new coach and GM a blank draft board, that's football's suicide. They need ammo. They need those picks to rebuild from the ground up. And honestly, that's where the Bengals have to start thinking differently. Because before that Jets game, I was right there with everyone else, saying, let's go get Quinnen Williams. Let's go all in. But after watching this defense crumble again, reality hit. This isn't a one-year fix. It's not even a 2-year fix. This could take 5 years to truly rebuild into a top-tier unit. And that means throwing away draft capital for a short-term splash move makes no sense. Not right now. The Bengals need to step back, reset, and rebuild the right way, through smart drafting, real leadership, and a vision that starts at the very top. Because the truth is, no trade is saving this defense overnight. The only way this turns around is if the organization takes a hard look in the mirror, from ownership, to Duke Tobin, to Zac Taylor, and decides whether it's time for real change. If that happens, if Cincinnati finally cleans house and builds a football operation with purpose, then yeah, the draft will matter again. The defense will grow again. And this franchise will finally start climbing back toward the contender it was built to be. But until then, it's about patience, tough decisions, and facing the truth. This rebuild starts from the top down. You fix the leadership first, then you fix the defense. That's the reality, Bengals fans. One step at a time. One hard decision after another. The jungle's been quiet for too long, but maybe, just maybe, this is where the roar starts to come back.